The yellow lights of Terminal 6 cast long shadows across the concrete as Sophia Walker made her way between the towering metal containers. The night shift at Portland's busiest shipping terminal had barely begun, but already she felt the weight of eyes tracking her movements. 3 months as CEO of Walker Maritime Logistics hadn't earned her the respect of the dock workers, who still saw her as the pampered heiress playing at Running Daddy's company. What they didn't know was that tonight she wasn't here as CEO. Sophia checked her watch, 11:42 p.m., and quickened her pace toward the northeast section where Container Block D housed the recently arrived shipments from Singapore. According to the manifest she'd discovered hidden in her Uncle Richard's private files, something was arriving tonight that wasn't on any official record. Something worth risking her position, her reputation, and maybe more to investigate. The wind off the Columbia River cut through her thin designer jacket, a reminder that she'd dressed for a boardroom, not a midnight excursion to the docks. But when the accounting discrepancies had led to encrypted shipping records, she couldn't wait for a more convenient time. Walker Maritime was her family's legacy. 4 generations of building a logistics empire that connected Oregon to the world. If someone was using it for smuggling, she needed proof before taking it to the board. A noise from behind a nearby container made her freeze. Sophia pressed herself against the cold metal, her heart hammering against her ribs. Voices drifted through the maze of containers, low, masculine, unfamiliar. What the hell am I doing? I should have hired someone for this. But who could she trust? Since taking over after her father's stroke, she discovered just how isolated she truly was in the company. The board, led by her Uncle Richard, treated her like a puppet expected to smile for clients while they made the real decisions. Her cousin James, bitter about being passed over for CEO, undermined her at every turn. Even her executive assistant reported her movements to Richard. No, this was something she had to do herself. The voices grew closer. Sophia slipped between 2 containers, her slim form barely fitting in the narrow gap. Through the cracks, she could make out 3 men, not dock workers, but suits, management level. She recognized Martin Briggs, the terminal operations manager, and beside him, her cousin James, his face twisted in that perpetual sneer he reserved just for her. James ran a hand through his meticulously styled hair. You need to understand something, Martin. These shipments bypass all standard protocols. No scanning, no inspection, straight from ship to truck. My Uncle Richard has arranged everything with your superiors. Martin shifted uncomfortably. I don't know, Mr. Walker. After that customs surprise visit last month, we're under more scrutiny. If they catch us moving unregistered containers, James cut him off with a sharp gesture. That's why you're being compensated so generously. Your job is to make sure no one asks questions. These containers move tonight or we find someone else who understands how business really works in this port. Sophia's breath caught in her throat. The recording app on her phone was running, capturing every word. This was it, the confirmation she needed. Walker Maritime wasn't just cutting corners. They were deliberately circumventing federal regulations. The question was, what was in those containers? James and Martin moved away, their conversation fading into the ambient sounds of the port. Sophia waited several minutes before slipping from her hiding place. She needed to find container SG42753, the one listed in Richard's secret manifest, before it disappeared onto a truck. The container codes blurred as she hurried along the row, scanning for the right combination. Her designer boots, never intended for dock work, pinched with every step. Finally, she spotted it. SG42753, positioned at the end of the row, already set apart for quick loading. Sophia approached cautiously, checking for security cameras. Most were aimed at the perimeter or main thoroughfares, her uncle's doing, no doubt creating deliberate blind spots. The container's seal looked standard, but she knew better than to break it. Instead, she documented everything with her phone, the container number, location, and the non-standard routing tags affixed to its side. A powerful flashlight beam suddenly cut through the darkness, catching her in its glare. Sophia raised her hand to shield her eyes, momentarily blinded. Well, the princess herself slumming with the working class? James emerged from behind the light, flanked by 2 men she didn't recognize. Large, intimidating figures who definitely weren't on the Walker Maritime payroll. The taller one had a jagged scar running from his left eye to his chin, while the other's massive arms strained against his jacket. How convenient. I was just telling my associates about my troublesome cousin who can't seem to mind her own business. Sophia backed away, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. James, whatever you're involved in, it's not too late to fix this. We can go to the authorities together, explain that Uncle Richard pressured you. James laughed, the sound echoing metallically off the containers. Always the naive little girl. You think this is something Richard forced on me? This operation was my idea. The old man just had the connections to make it happen. He gestured to the men beside him. Check her phone. Scarface lunged forward. Sophia turned to run, but her heel caught on the uneven concrete. She stumbled, nearly falling as the man grabbed her arm, his fingers digging painfully into her flesh. He twisted her wrist until she dropped the phone with a clatter. The second man scooped it up, tapped a few buttons, then nodded to James. Got it all, boss. She was recording. Sophia's mind raced. She hadn't backed up the recording yet. Everything she'd discovered was on that phone. The discrepancies, the manifests, the conversations she'd just recorded. Without it, she had nothing. James pocketed her phone, then grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at him. Did you really think you could play Detective Sophia? That Stanford MBA make you think you understand how the real world works? He tightened his grip. We've built something here that's bigger than your precious ethics. The Walker name means something in this industry because we do what others won't. Sophia jerked her face away. It means something because for 3 generations we built a reputation for integrity. What you're doing isn't just illegal. It betrays everything our family stands for. James's face hardened. What we stand for is survival. The shipping industry is dying, margins shrinking every quarter. While you were getting gold stars in business school, I was watching our company slowly bleeding out. He gestured to the container behind her. These special shipments tripled our profits last year. The board knows it. Richard knows it. Everyone understands what's at stake except you. What's in them? Sophia demanded, though she already suspected the answer. Weapons, drugs, James smiled thinly. Let's call it specialty merchandise that bypasses certain restrictive trade regulations. Realization dawned. That's why you installed Travis as head of compliance last year. You needed someone who would look the other way. Smart girl, James mocked. But being smart isn't going to help you now. The scarred man pushed her roughly against the container. We need to make this problem go away permanently. Walker Sophia's fear crystallized into terror as she caught the meaning behind his words. These men weren't just intimidation. They were fixers, the kind who made people disappear. She'd walk straight into a trap with no backup, no one who knew where she was. James considered her for a long moment. No, family is family despite everything, but she needs to understand the consequences of her curiosity. He nodded to the men. Make it convincing, but nothing permanent. I want her scared, not damaged. The bigger man cracked his knuckles, stepping closer. Sophia shrank back against the metal container, its cold surface unyielding against her spine. In that moment, she saw her life with perfect clarity. How she'd always played by the rules, always sought approval, always believed that doing the right thing would somehow protect her. But here in the shadowy maze of shipping containers, those beliefs offered no protection at all. The man raised his hand. Sophia flinched, closing her eyes as she cried out, "Please don't hit me." A new voice cut through the night calm, yet carrying an unmistakable edge of authority. Try touching her and see what happens. Sophia's eyes snapped open. A figure stood 20 feet away. A man in oil-stained coveralls, his stance relaxed but alert. In the harsh security lighting, she could make out weathered features, short-cropped hair, and eyes that assessed the situation with military precision. The scarred man turned, irritated by the interruption. Mind your own business, buddy. This doesn't concern you. The newcomer didn't move. A woman being threatened by 3 men in a deserted part of the terminal after midnight. Yeah, I think it concerns me. James stepped forward, annoyed but cautious. This is a private matter, worker. I'm James Walker, COO of Walker Maritime. This woman is my cousin. We're handling a family disagreement. The man in coveralls looked unimpressed. That's so. Then you won't mind if I call terminal security, have them come sort this out. His hand moved toward the radio clipped to his belt. James hesitated, then forced a smile. That won't be necessary. We were just leaving. He turned to Sophia. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow, cousin, when you've had time to reconsider your position. He motioned to his men and the 3 of them backed away, disappearing into the labyrinth of containers. Sophia sagged against the metal wall, her knees suddenly weak. The stranger approached cautiously, keeping a respectful distance. "You okay?" His voice was gruff, but concerned with a hint of southern drawl that softened the edges. She nodded shakily, trying to gather her composure. "Thank you. I don't think they would have. I mean, they're not." She trailed off, unable to convince even herself. The man's expression remained neutral. Men who corner women in isolated places at midnight aren't usually planning a birthday surprise. Despite everything, Sophia felt a bubble of hysterical laughter rise in her throat. She swallowed it down. "I'm Sophia Walker, and you are Michael Reed. I operate the container crane on the night shift." He gestured toward the towering structure that loomed over the terminal. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Walker. Any relation to the company that owns half this terminal?" Sophia hesitated. After what had just happened, revealing her position seemed unwise. But something in Michael's steady gaze made her answer honestly. "I'm the CEO, actually, though tonight makes me wonder how much control I really have." Michael's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe skepticism. "You're the boss." He looked her over, taking in the designer clothes and polished appearance that seemed so out of place among the gritty containers. No wonder those guys were jumpy. Sophia brushed dust from her jacket, a futile gesture that gave her hands something to do besides shake. "The title's mostly for show, apparently. The real decisions happen behind my back." She glanced in the direction James had disappeared. "That was my cousin James. He's been running alternative revenue streams that I wasn't supposed to discover." Michael's posture shifted subtly, a wariness entering his stance. "So I just stepped into some corporate espionage." "Great." He took a step back. "Look, Ms. Walker, I don't want any part of whatever's happening here. I'm just a guy trying to make it through his shift without trouble." Sophia felt a pang of guilt. "Of course, I'm sorry to have involved you." She straightened her shoulders, trying to reclaim some dignity. "I should go before they come back." As she turned to leave, Michael called after her. "Hey, the main gate's that way." He pointed in the opposite direction. "And you might want this." He held out a folded piece of paper that had fallen from her pocket during the confrontation. Sophia took it, recognizing the list of container numbers she'd copied from Richard's manifest. "Thanks." She hesitated, then asked, "Do you always intervene when you see someone in trouble?" Michael's face remained impassive. "I've seen enough bad things happen when people look the other way." His voice carried the weight of experience that suggested military service, though he offered no details. "You should be more careful. Not everyone on these docks is worth trusting." With that enigmatic warning, he turned and walked away, his figure soon swallowed by the shadows between the containers. Sophia watched him go, struck by the strange encounter. In less than 5 minutes, this dock worker had shown more integrity than her entire family had in years. She looked down at the paper in her hand. James had her phone with all its evidence, but he didn't know about this list. It wasn't much, but it was something. Container numbers, dates, and destinations that didn't match any official records. Enough to start rebuilding her case. As she made her way toward the terminal exit, a new resolve hardened within her. For the first time since becoming CEO, Sophia felt the weight of the Walker legacy not as a burden, but as a responsibility. If her family had corrupted the company her great-grandfather had built, then it fell to her to set it right, whatever the cost. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Sophia's downtown penthouse, but did nothing to dispel the chill that had settled in her bones after last night's confrontation. She stared at the coffee growing cold in her mug, replaying every moment at the terminal. James had taken her phone, but he couldn't erase what she'd seen and heard. Her hand hovered over her landline. One call to the FBI and this would be out of her hands, but the consequences would be devastating. Not just for James and Richard, but for everyone who depended on Walker Maritime. Hundreds of employees, dozens of partner companies, an entire ecosystem that relied on the Walker family's business remaining solid and respectable. And there was another complication. Without hard evidence, it would be her word against James and Richard. The board would close ranks around them. She needed proof that would be impossible to dismiss. The intercom buzzed, startling her from her thoughts. "Walker, your 9 a.m. appointment is here." The Blackstone Group representatives, Sophia cursed under her breath. She'd completely forgotten about the potential investors. After the events at the terminal, a meeting to discuss expansion capital seemed absurdly mundane. Send them to the conference room. I'll be there in 5 minutes. She changed quickly into a fresh suit, applied makeup to cover the shadows under her eyes, and transformed back into the polished, confident CEO that the world expected. The mask felt heavier than usual as she strode into the conference room, greeting the Blackstone executives with practiced charm. For 90 minutes, Sophia discussed market projections, competitive advantages, and return on investment scenarios. She answered questions about their Asia-Pacific strategy and explained their technological integration plans. Not once did her voice betray the fear still coiled in her stomach or the anger simmering beneath her professional demeanor. When the meeting finally ended, her assistant Vanessa handed her a stack of messages. Your cousin James called 3 times, said it's urgent, and your uncle wants to see you at the main house this evening. Family dinner. Of course he does. Sophia's tone was light, but her grip tightened on the papers. Please clear my schedule after 2 p.m. I have some personal matters to attend to. As soon as Vanessa left, Sophia locked her office door and pulled out the list of container numbers she'd rescued from the terminal. If she couldn't recover what was on her phone, she would need to build new evidence. And for that, she needed someone who understood the operational side of the terminal, someone who wasn't beholden to Richard or James. Her mind returned to the dock worker who had intervened last night. Michael Reed, a container crane operator who'd stepped between her and danger without hesitation. Someone who, as far as she knew, had no connections to the Walker family politics. 20 minutes later, Sophia had his personnel file open on her computer. Michael Reed, 37, former Navy SEAL, widowed, 1 daughter, exemplary service record before an honorable discharge 5 years ago. Hired at Terminal 6 as a forklift operator, quickly promoted to crane operator based on his precision and reliability. No disciplinary issues, though his supervisor noted he keeps to himself and doesn't socialize with other workers. Sophia studied his ID photo. In the harsh fluorescent lighting of an HR office, his features looked even more severe than they had at the terminal. Strong jaw, straight nose that might have been broken, once eyes that revealed nothing. Not conventionally handsome, but striking in a weathered, capable way. Before she could reconsider, she picked up her secure personal phone, not company issued, and dialed the terminal's personnel office. This is Sophia Walker. I need to speak with one of your crane operators. Michael Reed. It's about a safety observation he filed last night. A small lie, but necessary. 20 minutes later, a gruff voice came on the line. Reed here, Mr. Reed. This is Sophia Walker. We met last night at the terminal. A pause, then Ms. Walker. Didn't expect to hear from you. His tone gave nothing away. I'd like to thank you properly for your assistance. Perhaps over coffee? Another pause, longer this time. I appreciate the offer, but I don't need thanks for doing the decent thing. His voice remained neutral, but she detected a hint of wariness. Sophia chose her next words carefully. It's not just about thanks. There's something I'd like to discuss regarding what you witnessed. Something that might affect terminal operations. That caught his attention. She heard him exhale slowly. Terminal 6, cafe across from the main entrance. 4 o'clock. I finished my shift at 3:30. The line went dead before she could respond. Sophia set down her phone, wondering if she was making a terrible mistake. Involving an outsider in family business went against everything she'd been taught. But then so did smuggling contraband through their own terminals. Terminal 6. Cafe was a far cry from the upscale bistros Sophia frequented in the Pearl District. The small diner served the dock workers, truck drivers, and customs agents who kept the port running, offering hearty meals at prices that reflected its clientele. As she pushed through the door at precisely 4 o'clock, conversations faltered and heads turned. Her tailored navy suit and pearls might as well have been a spacesuit for how out of place they were. Michael sat in a corner booth, still in his work coveralls, a mug of black coffee in front of him. His eyes tracked her as she navigated between tables, noting the stares and whispers that followed her. When she reached his table, he didn't stand or offer any greeting beyond a slight nod. You're punctual. I'll give you that. He gestured to the seat across from him. Sophia slid into the booth, acutely aware of the curious glances from the other patrons. A waitress approached, eyeing her expensive outfit with undisguised curiosity. Coffee, please. Black. Sophia smiled, but the waitress merely nodded and retreated. Michael studied her silently until the coffee arrived, then spoke quietly. You stand out here like a peacock in a chicken coop. Was that your plan? Make sure everyone notices the CEO slumming with the workers? His bluntness caught her off guard. No, he cut her off with a gesture. I checked you out after your call. Sophia Walker, 30 years old, Stanford MBA, took over as CEO when Daddy had a stroke 8 months ago. Press calls you the reluctant heiress because you spent your 20s working for nonprofits instead of learning the family business. Sophia felt heat rise to her cheeks. I didn't realize I was such an open book. He shrugged. When the boss of the company that signs your paycheck wants a meeting, you do your homework. His eyes, a deep blue that bordered on gray, assessed her carefully. So why are we here, Ms. Walker? What's so important that you'd risk your reputation coming to a place like this? The directness of his question was refreshing after months of boardroom doublespeak. Sophia leaned forward, lowering her voice. I need your help. What you saw last night wasn't a family disagreement. My cousin and uncle are using Walker Maritime to smuggle illegal goods. I've been gathering evidence, but James took my phone last night. Without proof, I can't go to the authorities. Michael's expression didn't change, but she noticed his posture shift slightly, a subtle tensing. And what exactly do you think I can do about corporate corruption? I operate a crane. I move containers where I'm told. Sophia pulled out the list of container numbers, sliding it across the table. These containers bypass normal inspection. They're unloaded at night, moved immediately to the trucks, and shipped out before morning. I need to know what's in them. Michael glanced at the paper without touching it. So you want me to, break into sealed containers? Risk my job, maybe go to prison, because you've got family drama. It's more than family drama. Sophia's voice took on an edge of urgency. Whatever they're bringing in, it's serious enough that James was willing to use force to keep it quiet. If it's weapons or drugs, and why should I care? Michael's question was soft but direct, his eyes never leaving hers. Why should I stick my neck out for a woman who probably spends more on shoes each month than I make in a year? Sophia flinched at the assessment but didn't back down. Because it's the right thing to do. Because you already showed you're the kind of person who doesn't walk away when something's wrong. She paused, then added, and because whatever they're smuggling affects this community too. Your community. Michael was silent for a long moment, his weathered face unreadable. Finally, he picked up the list, folded it, and tucked it into his pocket. I'll think about it. That's all I'm promising. Before Sophia could respond, the cafe door swung open with a bang. A small blonde whirlwind burst in, scanning the room before spotting Michael and racing toward their booth. Daddy, I got an A on my science project. The little girl, about 9 years old, brandished a paper covered in gold stars. Ms. Jenkins said my paper boats demonstration was the best in the class. Michael's transformation was immediate and startling. The hard edges of his face softened, and genuine warmth filled his eyes as he scooped the child into the one-armed hug. That's my girl. I told you those experiments we did would pay off. The girl finally noticed Sophia, her bright blue eyes, so like her father's, widening with curiosity. Who are you? Michael cleared his throat. Emma, this is Ms. Walker. She's from work. Ms. Walker, my daughter Emma. Sophia smiled, charmed by the child's directness. It's nice to meet you, Emma. I heard you mention paper boats. Emma nodded enthusiastically. I make them all the time. I write hope on them and float them down the canal by our apartment. Daddy says someday they'll reach the real ocean. An older woman appeared at the edge of their booth, slightly out of breath. Sorry, Michael. She ran ahead when she saw your truck in the parking lot. She nodded politely to Sophia. I'm Margaret, Emma's after-school sitter. Michael checked his watch. Thanks, Margaret. I'll take her home now. He stood, effectively ending the conversation with Sophia. To her, he simply said, I'll be in touch. As he gathered Emma's backpack and took her hand, the little girl turned back to Sophia. Do you want to see my boats? Sometime I could teach you how to make them. Before Sophia could answer, Michael interjected gently. Ms. Walker is very busy, Emma. She runs an important company. Emma looked skeptical. But everyone needs hope, Daddy, even busy people. With that profound statement, she allowed herself to be led away, chattering about her school day as they exited the cafe. Sophia watched them go, struck by the contrast between the guarded man she'd been negotiating with and the tender father who'd emerged when his daughter appeared. The waitress appeared at her elbow. Refill? Sophia nodded, her mind still on the unexpected interaction. Is he always like that? So The waitress followed her gaze to the door. Protective, yeah, ever since his wife died. Cancer 5 years back. Left him with Emma when she was just 4. The woman's tone softened. He's a good man. Works double shifts sometimes to give that little girl everything she needs. Doesn't date, doesn't drink, doesn't do anything but work and take care of his daughter. Sophia absorbed this information, feeling a new dimension of respect for the stern crane operator. Thank you for telling me. As she paid her bill and prepared to leave, her secure phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I'll check the next container on your list. Tomorrow night. Don't come to the terminal. I'll contact you. Sophia felt a surge of hope as she stepped out into the fading afternoon light. She had an ally. Reluctant perhaps, but an ally nonetheless. For the first time since discovering the discrepancies in the shipping records, she didn't feel completely alone. The Walker family estate overlooked the Willamette River from the heights of Portland's West Hills, a sprawling Tudor mansion that had been in the family for 3 generations. As Sophia's car crunched up the gravel driveway, she steeled herself for the confrontation to come. If James had told Richard about the terminal incident, she would be walking into an ambush. The housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, greeted her at the door with practiced formality. They're in the library, Ms. Sophia. Her eyes, which had watched Sophia grow from a toddler to a woman, held a warning that her voice didn't convey. Sophia nodded her thanks and made her way through the familiar halls, past oil paintings of ships and family patriarchs, including her great-grandfather, who had started with a single tugboat and built an empire. What would he think of what his company had become? She paused outside the library doors, listening to the murmur of voices within. Taking a deep breath, she pushed them open without knocking. Richard Walker sat in his customary leather chair by the fireplace, a glass of bourbon in hand. At 65, he remained an imposing figure. Tall, silver-haired, with the confident bearing of a man accustomed to command. James stood by the window, tension evident in the set of his shoulders. Catherine Walker, Sophia's older cousin, and the family's legal counsel, perched on the arm of a sofa, her expression unreadable. Ah, Sophia. Richard's voice was smooth as aged whiskey. Join us. We were just discussing the company's future. Sophia remained standing, her gaze moving between the 3 of them. I'm sure you were. Just like you've been discussing the special shipments through Terminal 6, the ones that bypass all inspection protocols. The room went silent. Richard's face betrayed nothing as he took a deliberate sip of his bourbon. James has shared his concerns about your nocturnal activities. His tone was measured, almost paternal. You've misunderstood what you've seen, my dear. Have I? Sophia's voice was steady despite the anger churning inside her. I've misunderstood accounting discrepancies. Secret manifests, armed men threatening me on our own property. Catherine sat up straighter, her lawyer's instincts engaged. James told us there was an incident, but he didn't mention threats or weapons. She shot a sharp look at James, who avoided her gaze. Richard waved a dismissive hand. A mischaracterization, I'm sure. James was simply protecting company interests from potential corporate espionage. He fixed Sophia with a pointed stare. Something you should understand as CEO. Sophia refused to be intimidated. What's in those containers, Uncle Richard? Richard sighed, setting down his glass. Progress requires certain adaptations to changing markets. What's in those containers is profit, Sophia. Pure and simple. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you need. Richard's tone hardened. Your father understood the necessities of modern business. He didn't ask questions when the bottom line improved. He focused on what Charles Walker built this company to be: successful. A flash of anger surged through Sophia. My father is lying in a hospital bed because he worked himself to exhaustion for this company. Don't you dare imply he'd condone smuggling. James stepped forward, his face flushed. Smuggling is such an ugly, simplistic term. We're facilitating specialized trade routes for clients with unique regulatory challenges. His lip curled slightly. But I wouldn't expect someone who spent years hugging trees with environmental nonprofits to understand business realities. Catherine intervened, ever the mediator. This is getting us nowhere. She turned to Sophia. The board has approved these special shipping arrangements. Everything has been vetted by outside counsel. Her eyes flickered with something, warning guilt. If you have specific concerns about legality, you should bring them to me directly, not conduct amateur investigations. Sophia looked at her cousin, searching for the woman who had once taught her to stand up for herself against schoolyard bullies. Is that really where you stand on this, Catherine? Or are you just doing what you're told like always? Catherine's face tightened, but before she could respond, Richard rose from his chair, commanding the room's attention. Enough, Sophia, you've been CEO for 8 months. In that time, you've questioned decisions, undermined strategies, and now you're spying on your own family. His voice remained calm, but steel ran beneath it. Your father named you as his successor because he believed you would grow into the role. I supported his choice out of respect for him, but my patience has limits. He moved to the desk, retrieving a folder which he held out to her. These are the quarterly financials. Our profits are up 22% year over year, largely due to the special shipping program James developed. The board is pleased. Our employees' jobs are secure. Our clients are satisfied. Sophia didn't take the folder. And if those profits come from illegal activities, what happens when the authorities discover what we're doing? Richard's expression hardened. That won't happen as long as we present a united front. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're a Walker, Sophia. Act like one. Family protects its own, and family business stays within these walls. The implicit threat hung in the air between them. Sophia looked from Richard to James to Catherine, suddenly seeing her family with painful clarity. They weren't the pillars of integrity she'd been raised to believe in. They were business people who had made compromises, crossed lines, rationalized decisions until right and wrong blurred into irrelevance. In that moment, Sophia realized she stood at a crossroads. She could acquiesce, accept the role they wanted her to play. Figurehead CEO, pretty face for the annual report keeper of the Walker legacy who asked no uncomfortable questions. Or she could fight for the company's soul even if it meant standing against her own family. The weight of 4 generations pressed down on her shoulders. Her great-grandfather had built this company with his own hands. Her grandfather had expanded it across the Pacific. Her father had modernized it for the digital age. And now it fell to her to either save it or expose it. Richard must have seen the conflict in her eyes. He softened his tone. Your father will be coming home from the care facility next month. Do you want his homecoming marked by a family scandal? By watching his life's work destroyed over your moral posturing? It was a masterful manipulation touching the very core of Sophia's guilt over her father's condition. Had the stress of this company's secret dealings contributed to his stroke? Would the truth help his recovery or destroy him completely? Before Sophia could formulate a response, the library door opened and Mrs. Chen appeared. Dinner is served, Mr. Walker. Richard nodded effectively, ending the confrontation. We'll continue this discussion later. For now, let's remember, we're family first, business associates second. He offered his arm to Catherine, who took it with practiced grace, though her eyes remained troubled. As they moved toward the dining room, James lingered behind, waiting until Richard and Catherine were out of earshot. You're out of your depths, Sophia. His voice was soft, dangerous. That dock worker who played hero last night, I know exactly who he is. Michael Reed, Terminal 6. Crane Operator 4, single father to a little blonde girl. He leaned closer. If you continue pushing this, it won't just be your career at stake. Accidents happen at shipping terminals all the time. Terrible, tragic accidents. Sophia felt ice water replace the blood in her veins. If you threaten him or his daughter, oh, you'll what? James's smile never reached his eyes. Go to the police, the FBI, with what evidence? Your word against the entire board, against your uncle, the most respected businessman in Portland shipping? He shook his head. Be smart for once. Take the win. You get to keep your title, your salary, your penthouse. All you have to do is look the other way. With that, he strode from the library, leaving Sophia alone with the weight of his threat. Her hands trembled as she gripped the back of a chair for support. James had gone from implied intimidation to explicit threats in the space of 24 hours. Whatever was in those containers, it was worth risking everything, even murder, to protect. And now she'd involved Michael Reed, a man who had simply been in the right place at the right time to help a stranger. A man with a daughter who folded paper boats inscribed with hope and believed they would someday reach the ocean. Sophia pulled out her secure phone and typed a message to the number Michael had used earlier. Urgent. Do not check containers. You and Emma may be in danger. We need to meet tomorrow. The response came almost immediately. Park by Waterfront Trail, 7 a.m. Sophia slipped the phone back into her pocket as Mrs. Chen reappeared at the door, her expression concerned. Miss Sophia Wong, your family is waiting. Sophia straightened her shoulders and followed the housekeeper toward the dining room, where she would smile and make small talk with people who had just threatened an innocent man and his child. She would pretend nothing was wrong, that she was considering their position, that she might be brought to heel with the right combination of pressure and incentives. Let them believe it. For now, the illusion of compliance was her best protection, and Michael's. Dawn painted Portland's skyline in watercolor hues of pink and gold as Sophia parked her car near the waterfront trail. She'd barely slept, her mind racing with scenarios, each more disastrous than the last. The weight of her discovery had grown exponentially now that it threatened not just her position or the company's reputation, but actual lives. She spotted Michael on a bench overlooking the Willamette River, his broad shoulders hunched against the early morning chill. He wore jeans and a faded blue work jacket rather than his terminal coveralls, but his military bearing was unmistakable even in repose. As she approached, he didn't turn, though she knew he was aware of her presence. "You were followed last night." His voice was matter-of-fact, eyes still on the river. Black Escalade-tinted windows parked across from the cafe after we left. Sophia sank onto the bench beside him, a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air running down her spine. "James must have had me tracked after the confrontation at the terminal. How did you know 5 years in special operations teaches you to notice when someone's watching?" Michael finally turned to her, his expression grim. "Your message said Emma might be in danger." Sophia nodded, hating the words even as she spoke them. "My cousin James identified you by name. He knows about Emma. He made it clear that if I continue investigating the shipments, there could be accidents at the terminal." Michael's face hardened, a muscle tightening along his jaw. The protective father she'd glimpsed in the cafe now emanated a controlled danger that reminded her of his military background. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." For the next 20 minutes, Sophia laid out the whole story. The accounting discrepancies she'd discovered, the secret manifest, the confrontation at the terminal, and finally the veiled threats at the family estate. Michael listened without interruption, his expression revealing nothing but his eyes growing colder with each new detail. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment. Then, "What's your endgame here, Ms. Walker? What do you hope to accomplish by exposing your family?" The question caught Sophia off guard. She'd been so focused on uncovering the truth that she hadn't fully considered the aftermath. "My great-grandfather built Walker Maritime on principles of integrity and service. Whatever they're smuggling, it betrays everything our company is supposed to stand for. I can't just ignore that. Principles don't pay bills or protect little girls." Michael's voice was flat. "If your family is moving weapons or drugs, they've got connections to people who won't hesitate to eliminate problems permanently." "I know." Sophia met his gaze squarely. "That's why I'm warning you to stay out of it. I never should have involved you in the first place. Find a reason to take some time off. Take Emma somewhere safe until this is resolved." Michael studied her with those penetrating blue eyes. "And you, what's your plan?" "March into the FBI office alone and hope your family doesn't get to you first." Something in his tone, concern beneath the criticism, warmed Sophia despite the circumstances. "I'll figure something out. I have some options." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You're a terrible liar, Ms. Walker." "Sophia, if we're discussing life-threatening conspiracies before breakfast, I think first names are appropriate." Michael nodded, conceding the point. "Right, Sophia. But my question stands. What's your next move?" Sophia gazed out at the river, watching the early light dance across its surface. The truth was, she didn't have a solid plan. Going to the authorities without concrete evidence would accomplish nothing except alerting her family that she'd taken action. But continuing to investigate alone had become too dangerous. "I need to know what's in those containers," she said finally. "Without that, it's just my word against theirs. But I can't ask you to help anymore. Not with Emma to consider." Michael was quiet for so long that Sophia thought he might not respond. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of a decision already made. "SG-42753. The container you were examining last night. It's scheduled for transfer to a truck at 2 a.m. He pulled a small notebook from his jacket pocket. "From what I could access in the system, it came off a ship from Singapore 3 days ago. No contents listed, just coded as specialty electronics. He tapped the notebook against his knee. Security's been doubled around that section. Whatever's in there, they're protecting it more than usual. Sophia blinked in surprise. You already checked. Michael shrugged. I was on shift. Easy enough to look up the routing without raising flags. Why would you risk that after what happened? He turned to face her fully, and for the first time she saw something beyond the carefully controlled exterior. A flash of old pain quickly masked. 5 years ago, I was part of a SEAL team sent to intercept a weapons shipment. Intelligence said it was heading to a terrorist cell. What they didn't tell us was that the weapons had American manufacturing marks, shipped through private contractors with government connections. He looked down at his hands calloused from years of labor. We lost 3 men in that operation. The official report said it was due to faulty intelligence. But I saw the shipping containers of the routing marks. They looked just like the ones on your list. Understanding dawned on Sophia. You think Walker Maritime was involved? Michael's expression was carefully neutral. I think someone was, and if your family is moving similar cargo now, I need to know, for my own reasons. The revelation shifted something fundamental between them. This wasn't just about Sophia's family legacy anymore. Michael had his own ghosts, his own need for answers. A sudden thought occurred to Sophia. If we could get evidence of what's in that container, photos, documentation, would that be enough for you? Enough to take to the authorities? Depends what we find. Michael's voice had taken on a new edge, the voice of a man planning an operation rather than a conversation. But first we need to get Emma somewhere safe. I won't risk her being used as leverage. Sophia nodded, relief and anxiety mingling in her chest. She'd found an ally with the skills to help her uncover the truth. But that alliance now placed a 9-year-old girl in potential danger. I have a lake house in Bend, off the company books purchased through a shell corporation for privacy from the press. No one in my family knows about it. She met Michael's gaze. Emma would be safe there while we figure this out. Michael considered this for a long moment, then gave a short nod. I'll need to bring Margaret her sitter. Emma trusts her, and I'll need someone I trust to stay with her. Of course, Sophia hesitated, then added, and Michael, thank you. I know what you're risking. He stood, effectively ending the conversation. Don't thank me yet. We don't know what we're walking into. His eyes, hard as flint, met hers. But if your cousin or anyone else threatens my daughter again, they'll learn exactly what I'm capable of. As he walked away, Sophia remained on the bench, watching the city wake up around her. The Walker family had ruled Portland shipping for 4 generations through business acumen, political connections, and sheer force of will. But they had never faced an adversary like Michael Reed, a man with nothing to lose except the daughter he would protect at any cost. For the first time since discovering the smuggling operation, Sophia felt something beyond fear and moral outrage. She felt hope, small and fragile as one of Emma's paper boats, but perhaps strong enough to carry her through the storm to come. The Central Oregon sky stretched endless and blue above Michael's pickup truck as it wound along Highway 26 toward Bend. In the passenger seat, Margaret Fisher knitted calmly, her weathered hands, never breaking rhythm despite the mountain curves. Behind them, Emma slept, her blonde head resting against a pile of hastily packed bags. To any passing motorist, they might have looked like a family heading for a weekend getaway, not people fleeing potential danger. Michael checked the rearview mirror for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. No sign of a tail since they'd left Portland before dawn. The lake house coordinates Sophia had provided were programmed into his phone, the location remote enough to offer security without complete isolation. They'd concocted a simple cover story. Margaret's sister had suffered a fall, and Michael was taking Emma to stay with her beloved sitter while the sister recovered. A week's emergency leave from the terminal had been approved without question. His first time off in 18 months had raised no suspicions. Emma stirred as they passed through the small town of sisters, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Are we almost there? Daddy, Margaret paused her knitting. We've got another half hour, sweetheart. But look, the mountains. She pointed toward the snow-capped Three Sisters peaks rising in the distance. Emma pressed her face to the window, momentarily distracted by the majestic landscape. Those are even bigger than the cranes at the terminal. Her excitement faltered as a thought occurred to her. But why isn't Sophia coming with us? Is she working? Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He told Emma only the essentials. They were taking a short vacation, staying at a friend's lake house. He hadn't mentioned the threats or the danger. Yes, she has some important business to take care of in Portland. Emma frowned, her perceptive gaze settling on her father's tense profile. You have your worry face. The same one you had when I broke my arm last year. Margaret intervened smoothly. I think your dad's just tired from driving Emma. Why don't you tell us more about those paper boats you were making yesterday? As Emma launched into a detailed explanation of her latest folding techniques, Michael caught Margaret's eye, nodding his thanks. The 62-year-old widow had been Emma's after-school caretaker since Dara died, becoming an essential part of their small family. When he'd explained the situation, at least the broad strokes, she hadn't hesitated to pack a bag and come along. 30 minutes later, they turned onto a narrow road that snaked through ponderosa pines before opening onto a vista of sparkling water. The lake house stood on a secluded peninsula, modern yet unobtrusive against the natural landscape, glass cedar and stone blending with the surrounding forest. A far cry from Michael and Emma's modest apartment near the Portland docks. Margaret let out a low whistle. Your CEO friend certainly knows how to live. Michael didn't respond as he parked beside the house. The opulence of the place only reinforced the vast gulf between Sophia's world and his own. Whatever alliance they'd formed was temporary, born of necessity rather than natural compatibility. A caretaker named Raymond greeted them at the door, an older man with the weathered look of someone who spent most of his time outdoors. Sophia called ahead. Everything's stocked and ready. He handed Michael a set of keys and a piece of paper with security codes. There's a panic room in the basement if needed, fully stocked, separate ventilation satellite phone. Michael nodded, processing the implications. Sophia hadn't mentioned a panic room. Either she was more concerned about their safety than she'd let on, or the Walker family had enemies beyond their current situation. As Raymond departed, Emma raced through the house, exclaiming over the floor-to-ceiling windows, the stone fireplace, and especially the deck overlooking the lake. Daddy, look, the water is so clear I can see fish. Can we go swimming? Can we make boats here? Michael forced a smile, trying to match her enthusiasm. Soon, kiddo. Let's get settled first. He turned to Margaret. There's a room at the end of the hall for you. Emma can take the one next to it. Margaret studied his face, then nodded toward Emma. She knows something's wrong. Children always do. Might be better to give her some version of the truth before she imagines something worse. Michael knew she was right. Emma had developed a sixth sense for trouble after losing her mother, becoming attuned to shifts in mood and unspoken tensions. But how did you tell a 9-year-old that bad people might want to hurt her to get to you? That evening, after a dinner of pasta and garlic bread that Margaret had somehow conjured from the well-stocked kitchen, Michael sat with Emma on the dock, their feet dangling above the water. The sunset painted the lake in shades of amber and gold, casting long shadows across their faces. Emma leaned against his side, uncharacteristically quiet. A paper boat rested in her hands, not yet launched onto the water. You and Sophia are trying to stop some bad people, aren't you? Michael's breath caught. The perceptiveness of children never ceased to amaze him. Who said anything about bad people? Emma gave him a look that was pure Sarah. One eyebrow slightly raised, her mouth quirked in exasperation. Daddy, I'm 9, not stupid. We left really fast this morning. You keep checking the windows. And you have your mission face. Mission face, like when you talk about being a SEAL. Serious but not scared. She folded a small crease in her boat, perfecting its symmetry. Plus, I heard you tell Margaret about keeping us safe when you thought I was asleep in the car. Michael stared out at the water, weighing his options. The instinct to shield her warred with the knowledge that half-truths might leave her more vulnerable. His silence stretched until Emma sighed dramatically. It's okay if you don't want to tell me everything, but don't pretend nothing's happening. That's worse. The wisdom in her young voice shattered something in Michael's chest. How many times had Sarah said almost the same thing during his military years? Don't shield me from your burdens. That's not protection, it's isolation. You're right, Em. There are some complicated things happening with Sophia's company. Some people aren't happy that we're looking into it, and I wanted to make sure you were somewhere safe while we sorted out. Emma considered this, her blue eyes thoughtful. Is Sophia in danger too? Yes. Michael saw no point in sugarcoating this part, but she's smart and careful, and I'm going to help her. Emma nodded solemnly. Then she needs one of my boats. She held out the paper creation she'd been perfecting. I made this one extra strong. The hope will help keep her safe. Michael took the small boat emotion, tightening his throat. The word hope was written on its side in Emma's careful handwriting, with a tiny compass star drawn beneath it. I'll make sure she gets it. Emma leaned her head against his shoulder again. Do you like her, Sophia? The question caught Michael off guard. She seems dedicated, principled. He searched for neutral descriptors that wouldn't reveal the complexity of his feelings toward the Walker heiress. Emma wasn't fooled. That's not what I asked Daddy. Before Michael could formulate a response, his phone vibrated with an incoming text. He pulled it out, recognizing Sophia's secure number. In position, container moves at 2 a.m., bringing evidence to Lake House tomorrow. Destroy this message. He deleted the text immediately, but not before Emma caught sight of it. Is that her? Does she need help right now? Michael pocketed the phone, his mind already calculating times and distances. No, kiddo. But I need to head back to Portland tonight. He saw the fear flash across her face and hastened to reassure her. You and Margaret will stay here where it's safe. I'll be back tomorrow, I promise. Emma's lower lip trembled slightly, but she straightened her shoulders in a gesture that wrenched Michael's heart, his daughter trying to be brave for him. Okay, but you have to take the boat. For protection. Michael carefully tucked the paper boat into his shirt pocket. It'll be right here next to my heart. The most valuable cargo I've ever carried. 2 hours later, with Emma asleep and Margaret knitting vigilantly beside her bed, Michael climbed into his truck for the 3-hour drive back to Portland. The paper boat sat on the dashboard, a fragile talisman against the dangers ahead. Terminal 6 loomed against the night sky, its massive cranes silhouetted like prehistoric beasts against the lights of Portland across the river. From his vantage point in the employee parking lot, Michael could see the security guards making their rounds more numerous than usual. James Walker wasn't taking any chances with tonight's shipment. At 1:30 a.m., he spotted Sophia's car entering the far lot exactly as they'd planned. She was dressed in dark clothes, her distinctive blonde hair tucked under a black cap, a futile disguise given her height and bearing, but better than nothing. She slipped between vehicles until she reached Michael's truck, sliding into the passenger seat with surprising stealth. Thank you for coming back. She was breathing hard, adrenaline evident in her rapid speech. I managed to clone James's security card yesterday before leaving the office. It should get us into the administrative section where we can access the CCTV feeds. Michael handed her a small earpiece. Put this in. We stay in contact at all times. If anything feels wrong, we abort immediately. He hesitated, then placed Emma's paper boat in her hand. From my daughter. Apparently it's for protection. Sophia stared at the small creation, visibly moved. She believes in the power of hope. That much Michael checked his watch, rather than meet her gaze. Emma sees the world differently than most people. The barriers between possible and impossible are still fluid for her. His voice softened. Sarah was the same way. Always believed things could be better if you just refused to accept the alternative. The mention of his late wife hung between them, a rare personal disclosure. Sophia folded her fingers carefully around the paper boat, then tucked it into her jacket pocket. I'll guard it with my life. Michael outlined their approach as they prepared to exit the truck. I still have active credentials for the maintenance areas. We'll enter through the service tunnel, make our way to the admin section using your clone card, access the security feed to locate the container, then document whatever we find. He handed her a small digital camera with night vision capability. No phones, nothing that can be traced back to you. Sophia nodded, her expression resolute. And if we're caught, Michael's face hardened. Then I'll deal with it. You run. His tone left no room for argument. They moved silently across the darkened terminal grounds, using the shadows of containers and equipment for cover. Michael led them to an unassuming maintenance door tucked between two storage buildings. His key card worked, admitting them to a long, dimly lit tunnel that ran beneath much of the terminal. Used for utility access, most of the security focus is above ground. Michael kept his voice low, though the thick concrete walls would prevent any sound from carrying. He still remembered the layout from countless maintenance shifts during his early days at the terminal. They emerged into a service corridor that connected to the main administrative building. Here, Sophia took the lead, using James's clone card to access progressively more secure areas. Each successful door increased Michael's suspicion the card shouldn't have worked on high-security sections unless James had override privileges beyond his official position. The security monitoring room was empty when they entered, the night guard likely making rounds or grabbing coffee. Dozens of screens displayed various areas of the terminal, including the container section where SG-42753 waited. Michael quickly located the feed and zoomed in. The container sat apart from others with two armed guards stationed nearby, not terminal security, but private contractors with tactical vests and earpieces. These guys aren't rent-a-cops. They're former military or law enforcement. Sophia studied the screen, her face pale in the blue light. Can we get past them? Not without creating an incident. But there's another way. He pointed to an adjacent screen showing the shipping office. The manifest system will have details that aren't in the public database. If your cousin is smuggling something illegal, the real manifest will be stored somewhere secure. Sophia's eyes narrowed in concentration. Richard's private server. It's not connected to the main network air-gapped for security, but terminal management would need access to the actual shipping contents for logistics purposes. She moved to a computer terminal and entered credentials that made Michael raise an eyebrow. CEO override codes. I haven't used them since taking office, but they should still work. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, navigating through layers of security. There, special handling protocols for executive authorized shipments. The screen displayed a list of container numbers that matched the ones Sophia had originally discovered. Next to SG42753 was a vague description, electronic components R&D prototypes. Sophia clicked, further trying to access specifics. A password prompt appeared. Richard's encryption. I can't break this without leaving digital fingerprints. Michael leaned closer, studying the screen. There's another way to see what's in that container. He pointed to a line of code in the shipping record. This override tag means the container's internal temperature and pressure are being monitored remotely. He opened another program and entered his maintenance credentials. For high-value electronics, they often install sensors to prevent damage. And those sensors, a new window opened showing environmental readings from inside SG42753. Michael's expression darkened as he studied the data. That's not electronics. The thermal pattern is all wrong. And these pressure variations. He looked up at Sophia, his suspicion confirmed. They're monitoring life signs. Sophia's face drained of color. Living cargo human trafficking. Michael saved the sensor data to a flash drive, his movements precise and controlled despite the growing anger in his chest. We need visual confirmation. Before Sophia could respond, a noise from the corridor sent them both diving for cover. Michael pulled Sophia behind a server rack seconds before the door opened. A security guard entered, yawning widely as he dropped into the chair they just vacated. The guard frowned at the active screens, clearly confused by what he was seeing. Hello, anyone in here? His hand moved toward the radio at his belt. Michael exchanged a quick glance with Sophia, then made a swift decision. Moving silently, he emerged from behind the rack and approached the guard from behind. One precise move rendered the man unconscious without injury, a technique from his SEAL days that he'd hoped never to use in civilian life again. Sophia stared at the collapsed guard, her eyes wide. Is he asleep? He'll wake up with a headache, but no lasting damage. Michael propped the guard in a position that suggested he dozed off naturally. We have maybe 20 minutes before someone notices he's not responding to check-ins. Let's move. They exited through a rear emergency door, setting off a silent alarm that Michael knew would take at least 5 minutes to register in the central system. Rather than heading directly to the container area, he led Sophia to a maintenance shed where terminal equipment was stored. We can't get close to that container without being seen, but we can see inside it from above. He pointed to the massive container crane that loomed overhead, its operator cab dark and empty. I can get us up there with maintenance keys. The crane cameras are designed to look directly down into containers when loading them. Sophia followed Michael into the shed, where he retrieved a set of keys from a locked box. Her eyes never left his face, studying him with a new awareness. You've done things like this before, not just in the military. Michael didn't answer as he selected a maintenance elevator that would take them up to the crane platform. His silence confirmed her suspicion more than words could have. The ascent to the crane operator's cab took less than 2 minutes, but felt like an eternity. When they finally reached the top, the view was breathtaking. The entire terminal spread below them, the lights of Portland glittering across the river, and beyond that, the dark silhouette of the West Hills where the Walker Mansion stood. Michael powered up the crane's systems in maintenance mode, ensuring no external indicators would betray their presence. The high-definition cameras used for precision placement of containers activated, displaying their feed on a monitor inside the cab. He manipulated the controls with practiced ease, swinging the boom until it positioned directly above SG42753. The camera zoomed in, revealing the container's roof. A series of small vents had been installed, modifications not standard for shipping containers. Michael adjusted the camera's infrared settings, revealing heat signatures within. The shapes were unmistakable. People, at least 12 of them. He enhanced the image further, divided into separate compartments. The thermal patterns indicate they're sedated or restrained. Beside him, Sophia made a small choked sound. My family is trafficking human beings. Michael captured the images, saving them to the flash drive along with the sensor data. As the evidence accumulated, his suspicions about Walker Maritime's connection to his past grew stronger. The operation had the same fingerprints as the weapon smuggling that had cost his teammates their lives, precise, professional, with high-level connections. We have what we need. His voice was tight with controlled rage. Let's go. They descended from the crane and were halfway to the maintenance tunnel when disaster struck. A security alert blared across the terminal. Not for their intrusion, but for something else entirely. Red emergency lights began to flash as a voice echoed over the PA system. Security breach at North Perimeter. All personnel respond. This is not a drill. Michael pulled Sophia behind a stack of pallets as security vehicles sped past, lights flashing. That's not about us. Someone else is making a move on the terminal. Sophia's eyes widened in realization. James, he must have moved up the transport schedule after suspecting I might interfere. He's extracting the container now while security is focused on a diversionary breach. Michael peered around the pallets, confirming her theory. In the distance, a truck was backing up to SG-42753, the private security team hurriedly preparing to load it. If that container leaves the terminal, those people disappear forever. Sophia finished his thought, her voice hardening with resolve. We can't let that happen. Michael assessed their options, none of them good. The flash drive in his pocket contained evidence that could eventually bring down the operation, but by then the current victims would be long gone. Calling the police would take too long, and without knowing which local officials might be in Walker Maritime's pocket could make the situation worse. He made his decision. You get to the truck with the evidence. I'll delay the transport. Sophia grabbed his arm. That's suicide. Those men are armed professionals. You can't. Michael cut her off. I've faced worse odds. His voice was calm but implacable. Get the evidence out. It's the only way to end this permanently. Before she could protest further, he handed her the keys to his truck. There's a compartment under the spare tire. Hide the drive there. Then get somewhere public, a hotel lobby, a 24-hour diner, anywhere with witnesses. He squeezed her shoulder briefly. If I'm not back by dawn, take the evidence to this man. He passed her a business card with a name and number, one of his former commanding officers who now worked for the FBI. He's clean. He'll know what to do. Sophia stared at the card, then back at Michael, conflict evident in her expression. Be careful. Emma needs you to come back. Michael thought of his daughter sleeping peacefully at the lake house, unaware that her father was about to confront armed traffickers. The reminder strengthened his resolve rather than weakening it. No child should lose a parent, not Emma, and not the children who might be inside that container, their families wondering where they'd gone. Go. Now. Michael didn't wait for Sophia's response, already moving toward the container, with silent predatory grace, a SEAL on mission once more. Across the terminal, James Walker paced beside the idling truck, checking his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. Where the hell is that driver? We're behind schedule. His phone buzzed with an incoming call from Richard. Not now. He silenced it without answering. The security diversion at the North Perimeter was working perfectly, drawing attention away from their accelerated extraction. By the time anyone realized what had happened, the cargo would be long gone, transferred to a private airfield outside Portland, where a chartered plane waited to take them to buyers in Eastern Europe. One of the security guards approached, his expression concerned. Sir, the temperature readings from the container are fluctuating. The sedatives may be wearing off on subjects 3 and 7. James swore under his breath. If any of them were fully conscious during transport, they could make noise draw attention. Load them now. We'll administer another dose at the airfield. As the guard moved to comply, a figure emerged from the shadows behind a nearby container. Before James could shout a warning, the man had taken down one guard with brutal efficiency. The second guard reached for his weapon, but too slowly a precise strike to his throat dropped him gasping to the ground. James backed away, fumbling for the gun he carried in his jacket. "Who the hell are you?" Michael stepped into the light, his face a mask of cold fury. The crane operator from the other night. James recognized him with shock. But how? The realization hit him like a physical blow. Sophia. She'd enlisted this dock worker, somehow discovering his military background. James raised his gun, but Michael was already moving, closing the distance between them with predatory speed. A kick sent the weapon flying from James's grasp. He stumbled backward, genuine fear replacing his usual arrogance. "Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? The people behind this operation will hunt you down like an animal. They'll find everyone you care about." Michael's fist connected with James's jaw, cutting off the threat and sending him sprawling onto the concrete. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with." His voice was terrifyingly calm. "The same people who sent my team into a trap 5 years ago. Was Walker Maritime involved then too? Or is human trafficking a new venture for your family?" James spat blood, his eyes darting around for escape routes or assistance. "You're insane. This is a legitimate shipping operation. Those containers hold electronic prototypes." Michael hauled him up by his expensive jacket. "Stop lying. There are people in that container. I've seen the thermal imaging." He slammed James against the side of the truck, the metal reverberating with the impact. "Where were you taking them?" Realization dawned in James's eyes. This man knew too much to be bluffing. Genuine fear replaced his bravado. "You don't understand. We're just the transportation. These people, they're already sold. If they don't reach their destination, the buyers will come looking." Michael's grip tightened. "Names. I want the entire operation, buyers, sellers, everyone involved." A new voice cut through the night air. "Let him go, Mr. Reed." Michael turned to find Richard Walker emerging from a black SUV that had pulled up silently behind them. The older man wasn't alone. Two more security personnel flanked him, their weapons drawn, but not yet aimed. Richard straightened his tie, seemingly unperturbed by the scene before him. "I believe we have a situation that requires delicate handling." He glanced at his nephew slumped against the truck. James always was prone to unnecessary drama. "I prefer a more measured approach." Michael didn't release James, using him as a human shield against the armed men. "Your measured approach includes trafficking human beings." Richard sighed as if disappointed by a poor business presentation. "Such an ugly characterization. We provide specialized transportation for high-value assets. The content of those assets is frankly not our concern." The cold indifference in his voice sent a chill through Michael's combat-hardened core. "These are people, children, assets, Mr. Reed." Richard's tone remained conversational, almost pleasant. "In a global marketplace, everything has a price, information, technology, specialized skills. Some buyers prefer their acquisitions to be sentient." As Richard spoke, Michael became aware of movement behind the SUV, a figure slipping away toward the terminal exit. Sophia, who must have followed him instead of escaping as instructed. She'd heard everything, her uncle confessing to human trafficking in his calm, reasonable voice. Richard continued, oblivious to his niece's presence. "I understand your moral objections. They're quite natural, but I assure you, fighting this particular tide is futile. The operation extends far beyond Walker Maritime. We're merely one node in a very sophisticated network." Michael needed to keep Richard talking to give Sophia time to escape with the evidence. "So that's the Walker family legacy now, glorified slave traders?" Richard's expression hardened slightly. "Don't be reductive. What we've built is an infrastructure that operates beyond conventional limitations. Governments, regulations, borders. These are constructs that impede true economic potential." He gestured toward the container. "These people will serve purposes that utilize their unique capabilities. Some will work in research facilities that official channels won't fund. Others have physical attributes that make them valuable in certain markets." Michael felt sick as the full scope of the operation became clear. It wasn't just trafficking, it was a systematized trade in human beings for various exploitative purposes, all conducted under the veneer of legitimate shipping business. James, recovering his composure, sneered through bloodied lips. "You think you can stop this? Even if you killed us both right now, the operation would continue. There are contingencies, redundancies. The next shipment is already being prepared in Singapore." Richard shot his nephew an irritated glance. "James, please. There's no need for theatrics." He turned back to Michael, his tone reasonable. Mr. Reed, you're clearly a man of principle and considerable skill. Those qualities are rare and valuable. I could use someone with your background in our security division. The compensation would be substantial. Michael stared at the man, incredulous. You're offering me a while after I caught you trafficking human beings. Not a job, Richard corrected smoothly. An opportunity. One that would provide very comfortably for that charming daughter of yours. Emma, isn't it? His smile never reached his eyes. Children are so precious, so vulnerable, especially when they have already lost one parent. The threat, delivered with civilized precision, ignited something primal in Michael's chest. He released James, shoving him toward Richard, and prepared to attack, even knowing he'd likely be shot in the process. Before he could move, however, the terminal erupted in chaos. Police sirens wailed at the main entrance, blue and red lights flashing through the night. Simultaneously, the terminal's emergency system activated gates, locking automatically as floodlights illuminated the entire area. Richard's composure finally cracked. What have you done? It wasn't me. Michael realized Sophia must have triggered the emergency protocols using her CEO access codes, then called the police. The system would automatically lock down the terminal, preventing the truck from leaving with its human cargo. James lunged for the discarded gun, but Michael was faster, delivering a kick that sent the weapon skittering under the truck. Richard's security men raised their weapons, but hesitated without direct orders to fire. Richard himself remained surprisingly calm, assessing the situation with the calculation of a seasoned strategist. Well played, but premature. He reached inside his jacket, producing not a weapon, but a phone. A single text message, and those police will be redirected to a non-existent threat elsewhere. Our contacts in local law enforcement are quite responsive. Michael tensed, preparing to rush the older man before he could send the message. But Richard's thumb never reached the screen. A precise gunshot shattered the night air, the bullet striking the phone and sending it flying from Richard's hand in a spray of plastic and circuitry. All heads turned toward the source of the shot. Catherine Walker stood 20 yards away, a pistol held in a professional two-handed grip. Her tailored pantsuit looked incongruous against the industrial backdrop, but her stance spoke of formal firearms training. That's enough, Uncle Richard. Her voice carried the same authoritative tone he often used, but with an edge of disgust. James, both of you on your knees, now. Richard's shock quickly transformed into calculation. Catherine, always the quiet one, the reasonable one. I didn't think you had this kind of initiative. Catherine's aim didn't waver. I've been building a case against you for months, gathering evidence, tracking shipments, following money. I just needed final confirmation of what was in those containers. She nodded toward Michael without taking her eyes off Richard. Mr. Reed and Sophia provided that tonight. James sputtered in disbelief. You're betraying your own family for what, some misguided moral crusade? Catherine's expression hardened. I'm saving our family, you idiot, from monsters like you who perverted everything we stood for. The Walker name used to mean something honorable in this city. More sirens approached, these sounding different from typical police vehicles. FBI, Catherine confirmed Michael's suspicion. I've been working with them since I found the first evidence 3 months ago. They're taking over from local police. We can't trust anyone Richard might have corrupted. Richard's face had gone ashen, the full implications sinking in. An internal betrayal, the one contingency he hadn't prepared for. You'll destroy everything. The company, the family legacy, all of it. Catherine's voice was ice. You already did that when you started trafficking children. She gestured with the gun. On your knees, now. As Richard and James reluctantly complied, Michael spotted movement near the container. Sophia emerging from hiding, her face pale but determined. She approached Catherine, relief evident in her expression. You knew. All this time, Catherine nodded slightly, her aim never wavering from Richard and James. I suspected. Then I found financial discrepancies while reviewing our Hong Kong subsidiary. Shipments that cost too much, mysterious payments to shell companies. She glanced briefly at her cousin. I couldn't tell you until I was sure. Richard has eyes and ears everywhere in the company. Sophia moved to Michael's side, her shoulder brushing his in a gesture of solidarity. Did you know about the container? The people inside. Catherine's expression tightened with suppressed emotion. Not until tonight. I thought it was weapons, maybe drugs. Never this. She swallowed hard. We need to get them out. Medical teams are standing by. As if on cue, the first FBI vehicles roared into view, agents deploying with tactical precision. Catherine identified herself still keeping her weapon trained on Richard and James until federal agents took them into custody. Only then did she lower the gun, her professional demeanor cracking slightly to reveal the toll of her double life. Michael approached the container where agents were already working to open the sealed doors. His military training recognized the efficient response of a well-planned operation, but nothing could prepare him for what they found inside. 12 people, 4 adults and 8 children, ranging from approximately 10 to 16 years old, lay in specialized compartments designed for human transport. Medical monitoring equipment ensured they remained alive, but sedated during transit. Each compartment contained minimal identifying information: country of origin, physical specifications, and specialized skills or attributes that had made them valuable merchandise in an unthinkable market. A young FBI agent emerged from the container, his face ashen, despite obvious professional experience. 7 nationalities, all reported missing within the last month. The youngest is 9 years old, some kind of mathematics prodigy from Ukraine. The age, the same as Emma, hit Michael like a physical blow. He turned away, needing a moment to contain the surge of rage that threatened to overwhelm his carefully maintained control. Sophia followed, placing a hand on his arm. We stopped it. Her voice was gentle but firm. And from what Catherine told me, the evidence will help shut down the entire network. Michael watched as medical teams began carefully extracting the victims, treating each with gentle urgency. They're alive because of what we did tonight. But how many others have passed through Walker terminals over the years? How many children never made it home because people looked the other way? Sophia had no answer, her eyes reflecting the same haunted question. After a long moment, she pulled Emma's paper boat from her pocket, the small vessel somehow undamaged despite the night's chaos. Your daughter was right. Hope does float even in the darkest waters. Michael touched the folded paper, thinking of Emma safe at the lake house. These children deserve the same chance to make paper boats, to dream, to grow up with someone who loves them. His voice roughened with emotion. Will they get to go home? Most of them. Catherine had approached silently, her composure restored, though exhaustion lined her face. Some have no homes to return to. They were sold by desperate relatives or taken from state institutions. She hesitated, then added, Walker Maritime will establish a foundation to ensure they all have support and protection going forward. It's the least we can do to begin making amends. A senior FBI agent interrupted, requesting their formal statements. The process took hours, the sun rising over the Columbia River, by the time they finished documenting the night's events. Richard and James had been transported to federal holding, along with several terminal managers implicated in the operation. The human cargo, the agent corrected himself, the victims had been taken to a secure medical facility for treatment and debriefing. As Michael and Sophia finally prepared to leave, Catherine approached them one last time, her professional mask slipping to reveal the weight of family betrayal. The board is convening an emergency session this afternoon. As the remaining Walker family member with significant shares, I've recommended Sophia be reinstated as CEO to manage the crisis and restructuring. Sophia looked stunned. You want me to take over? After all this? Catherine's smile was tired but genuine. You were right all along. The company needs someone with a moral compass, not just business acumen. She glanced at her watch. I have to go. The federal prosecutors want to review the financial evidence again before the arraignment. As Catherine walked away, Michael studied Sophia's face, noting the conflict there. Would you do it? Return to Walker Maritime after everything that's happened? Sophia stared out at the terminal, now bustling with federal agents, forensic teams, and media gathered at the perimeter. The Walker name is poison now. The company stock will plummet when this news breaks. Clients will abandon us. Employees will lose jobs, the reputation built over 4 generations. She trailed off, the enormity of the situation overwhelming. Michael waited, sensing she hadn't finished. After a moment, Sophia straightened her shoulders, a new resolve hardening her features. But maybe that's necessary. Maybe Walker Maritime needs to be rebuilt from the foundation up, with transparency, ethics, and actual human values. She turned to Michael, her eyes reflecting both determination and uncertainty. Could something good come from this much darkness? Michael thought of the children being treated in hospitals, soon to be reunited with desperate families. of networks being dismantled across continents because of what they'd uncovered, of Emma, who believed so firmly in hope that she sent it out into the world on paper boats. Yes. His answer was simple but absolute. From his pocket, he withdrew his terminal ID badge, studying it briefly before tucking it away again. But I can't go back there, not after tonight. Sophia nodded understanding, without need for explanation. They walked together toward the terminal exit, exhaustion catching up with both of them as adrenaline faded. I need to get back to Emma. Michael's thoughts had never strayed far from his daughter throughout the long night. She'll be worried, especially if she's seen any news reports. Sophia hesitated, then offered, I can drive you. You haven't slept in over 24 hours. It's not safe. The irony of safety concerns after the night they just experienced wasn't lost on either of them. But Michael accepted with a nod, too drained to argue. As they reached his truck, Sophia paused, her hand on the passenger door. Thank you for believing me when no one else did, for risking everything to help people you'd never met. Michael thought about the children in the container, about his fallen teammates from years ago, about the countless invisible victims of operations like Richard's. It wasn't a choice. When you see something that wrong, you either act or become part of the problem. The simplicity of his moral code stood in stark contrast to the complex ethical compromises of the Walker family. Sophia studied him for a long moment, something shifting in her expression, respect deepening into something more personal. People like you are rare, Michael Reed. In my world, everyone has an angle, a price, a limit to their principles. She shook her head slightly, as if still processing the reality of him. But you just do what's right regardless of the cons. Michael opened the truck door, uncomfortable with her admiration. I'm not special, just stubborn. And I've seen what happens when good people convince themselves that evil is someone else's problem. As they drove away from Terminal 6, the morning sun illuminated the massive cranes and container stacks, the infrastructure of global commerce that connected Portland to the world. Behind them, federal agents continued dismantling a criminal enterprise that had operated in plain sight, protected by wealth influence and the human tendency to look away from uncomfortable truths. Ahead lay a 3-hour drive to Bend, where Emma waited with her paper boats, an unshakable belief that hope always found a way to stay afloat even in the darkest waters. Dawn had stained the Cascade Mountains pink by the time Sophia pulled Michael's truck into the lake house driveway. The night's adrenaline had long since faded, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion that made even turning off the ignition feel like a monumental task. For most of the 3-hour drive from Portland, they'd remained silent, each processing the horrors they'd witnessed at Terminal 6. The front door burst open before they had even stepped from the vehicle. Emma flew across the gravel in bare feet, her blonde hair streaming behind her, still in the unicorn pajamas she'd worn to bed. Daddy, you're back. You're okay. Michael caught her mid-leap, swinging her into a tight embrace that spoke volumes about the night's dangers. I promised I'd come back, didn't I? Emma clung to his neck, then leaned back to study his face with that penetrating gaze that missed nothing. You look super tired and sad. Did the bad people hurt someone over Emma's shoulder? Michael's eyes met Sophia's. How do you explain the darkness of human trafficking to a 9-year-old? How do you reconcile a child's view of the world with the reality they'd confronted overnight? We helped some people who were in trouble. Michael kept his explanation simple but honest. It was hard and scary sometimes, but they're safe now. He set Emma down gently. And your boat helped just like you said it would. Emma's face lit up as she turned to Sophia. Did you use my Hope boat? Sophia knelt to Emma's level, unfolding the now somewhat crumpled paper vessel from her pocket. It kept me safe all night. The strongest boat I have ever seen. The genuine warmth in Sophia's voice caught Michael by surprise. Despite her exhaustion, despite everything she'd learned about her family's criminal enterprise, she'd found the compassion to engage with his daughter's concerns. The corporate mask had fallen away entirely, revealing the woman beneath one who understood that Emma's paper boat represented something far more meaningful than folded paper. Margaret appeared in the doorway, her keen eyes taking in their haggard appearance. You two look like you've been through the ringer. Come inside, I've got coffee brewing and breakfast nearly ready. The normalcy of hot coffee and pancakes after the night they'd experienced felt surreal but necessary. As Emma chattered about the fish she'd spotted in the lake and the deer that had visited at dawn, Michael found himself grateful for the child's innocent enthusiasm. It grounded him, creating a buffer between the darkness they'd confronted and the possibility of something better. Halfway through breakfast, Sophia's secure phone buzzes. She checked the message, her expression growing serious. The story's breaking. National news. Catherine's holding a press conference at 10. Michael nodded, unsurprised. An international human trafficking ring operated through a respected American shipping company, with arrests including the company's former president and COO. The media would feast on this for weeks. Have they released the victims' identities? Sophia shook her head. Not yet. But Catherine's arranged for the Walker Foundation to cover all medical expenses and repatriation costs. She hesitated, glancing at Emma, who was absorbed in drawing a picture. She's also confirmed that 3 previous shipments had gone through Terminal 6 in the past year, possibly dozens of victims. The confirmation of earlier victims hit Michael hard. They'd stopped one shipment, but how many others had passed through Portland while he operated cranes overhead, oblivious to what transpired below? The weight of unknowing complicity settled in his chest, making the pancakes taste like ash. Sensing his distress, Sophia touched his hand briefly. We caught them. That's what matters now. The network is being dismantled across 3 continents. Emma looked up from her drawing. Is Sophia staying with us now? The innocent question hung in the air, highlighting the strangeness of their situation. Less than 72 hours ago, Sophia had been the CEO of a multinational corporation, and Michael a dock worker she barely knew. Now they sat at a breakfast table, bonded by shared trauma and unexpected alliance. Sophia recovered first. I should probably head back to Portland soon. There's going to be a lot to deal with at the company. Emma's face fell. But you just got here, and you haven't even seen my boats float on the lake yet. Margaret intervened with grandmotherly diplomacy. Why don't you all get some rest first? Nobody should be making decisions or driving after being up all night. She began clearing plates with efficient movements. Emma and I will go into town for supplies this afternoon. You two can sleep. Michael recognized the woman's wisdom. The events at the terminal had left him physically and emotionally drained. One look at Sophia confirmed she felt the same dark circles beneath her eyes. Shoulders slumped with exhaustion. Rest, then decisions. When Michael woke, afternoon sunlight streamed through unfamiliar windows. For a moment he couldn't remember where he was. Then the events of the previous night came rushing back, the container, the people inside, Richard's calm justification for human trafficking. He showered quickly, then followed the sound of quiet conversation to the deck overlooking the lake. Sophia sat in an Adirondack chair, phone pressed to her ear, her expression grave as she listened to someone on the other end. She'd changed into casual clothes, borrowed from the lake house's supply jeans, and a simple blue sweater that made her look younger, more vulnerable than the corporate armor she typically wore. Yes, I understand. No, I won't comment publicly until the legal team approves. She caught sight of Michael and nodded acknowledgement. I'll be there tomorrow morning. Yes, 9 o'clock. She ended the call with a cease, setting the phone on the side table. The board wants me back in Portland immediately. They're in full damage control mode. Michael leaned against the deck railing, taking in the view of the lake. News that bad. Sophia's laugh held no humor. Catastrophic. Walker Maritime stock has dropped 60% since the story broke. 3 major clients have already canceled contracts. The Port Authority is reviewing all our terminal leases. Michael absorbed this without comment. The company's implosion was inevitable after what they'd uncovered, but he found it difficult to muster sympathy for the financial fallout when he kept seeing those children in their transport compartments. Sophia seemed to read his thoughts. I know the company's problems seem insignificant compared to what those people endured, but 400 employees in Portland alone depend on Walker Maritime for their livelihoods. Most had no idea what Richard and James were doing. The reality of those jobs, honest people with families to support, mortgages to pay, added another layer of complexity to an already tangled situation. What will you do? Sophia gazed out at the water, her expression distant. Catherine and I spoke earlier. The board wants to appoint me as interim CEO to stabilize things while they determine a longer-term strategy. With Richard and James in federal custody and most of the executive team under investigation, there aren't many options. You're considering it. After everything they did, I'm considering saving what can be saved. Sophia turned to face him, a new determination in her eyes. Richard and James corrupted the company, but they aren't the company. There are good people there who deserve a chance to continue their careers without being tainted by association. Michael studied her, recognizing the steel beneath the exhaustion. In the short time he'd known her, Sophia Walker had transformed from the privileged CEO he'd initially dismissed to someone willing to risk everything to expose corruption. Now she seemed prepared to walk back into the fire to protect innocent employees. Before he could respond, the sound of a car in the driveway announced Margaret and Emma's return from town. Emma bounded onto the deck moments later, clutching a shopping bag and vibrating with excitement. "We got supplies for a proper boat launch." She upended the bag, spilling out colored paper marker string and tiny LED lights. "Margaret said we could have a ceremony tonight and send them all the way across the lake." Michael felt a smile break through his grim mood. His daughter's enthusiasm created its own gravitational pull impossible to resist. "Looks like you've thought of everything, Em." Emma turned to Sophia, suddenly shy. "Will you help make them? I got special gold paper for you." Sophia hesitated, clearly torn between her professional obligations and the simple invitation. "The corporate world could wait a few more hours. I'd be honored to join the fleet, Admiral Emma." Emma giggled at the title, then grew serious. "We need to make extra boats tonight, for the people you helped, so they can find their way home too." Michael and Sophia exchanged startled glances. The perceptiveness of children never ceased to amaze him, how Emma had intuited the heart of what had happened without knowing the details. Sophia knelt beside Emma, her voice gentle. "That's a beautiful idea. How many should we make?" Emma considered the question with grave importance. 12. One for each person. Daddy said there were 12 people who needed help. Michael felt his chest tighten. He'd mentioned the number in passing to Margaret, not realizing Emma had overheard. His daughter had processed this information in her own way, transforming a horror beyond her comprehension into a ritual of hope she could understand. For the next hour, the deck became a boat-building workshop. Emma instructed them in her precise folding technique, insisting that each crease be sharp and true. "The boats must be perfect to carry their hopes properly," she explained with the seriousness of a shipwright. Margaret brought out lemonade and cookies, watching with grandmotherly affection as CEO and former SEAL followed a child's exacting directions. As sunset approached, they carried their fleet of paper vessels down to the dock. Emma had assigned specific boats to each person: blue for Michael, gold for Sophia, pink for herself, and a rainbow-colored one for Margaret. The remaining 12 were crafted from white paper, each inscribed with the word home in Emma's careful handwriting. Emma orchestrated the launch with solemn ceremony. Each boat received a tiny LED light, waterproofed with clear tape before being set gently on the lake's surface. The evening breeze caught them carrying the twinkling fleet toward the center of the water. "Now we make a wish for each boat," Emma's voice carried across the still water. "But you can't say it out loud or it won't come true." Michael watched his daughter close her eyes tightly, her lips moving in silent communion with whatever forces she believed guided paper boats to their destinations. Beside him, Sophia followed suit, her profile softened in the fading light. Even Margaret bowed her head, honoring the child's ritual. After a moment, Michael closed his own eyes. He didn't believe in wishes, not after everything he'd seen in combat and civilian life. But he found himself hoping anyway for the trafficking victim's recovery, for Emma's continued innocence, for the possibility that exposing darkness could lead to something better. When he opened his eyes, the fleet had drifted further, becoming a constellation of tiny lights on the darkening water. Emma leaned against him, suddenly sleepy now that her mission was complete. The wishes are on their way now. They'll find the right people. Michael lifted her into his arms, her slight weight a reminder of how fragile and precious childhood was. "Time for bed, Captain. You've had a big day." As he carried Emma toward the house, he glanced back at Sophia, still standing on the dock, watching the paper boats until they disappeared into the gathering dusk. Morning arrived with the harsh intrusion of reality. Sophia's driver appeared at 8, sent from Portland to return her to the corporate chaos awaiting her. She stood in the driveway with her hastily packed bag, looking more like the CEO again, despite the borrowed clothes. Emma clung to Michael's hand, her earlier cheerfulness subdued by Sophia's impending departure. "You're really leaving, but our boats might come back with the answers." Sophia knelt to Emma's level, her corporate mask slipping once more. "The most important answers are already here." She placed a hand over Emma's heart. "You taught me that hope floats even when everything else seems to be sinking. I won't forget." Emma considered this, then nodded with the gravity of someone accepting a solemn promise. Will you come back to visit us? After you fix your company? Michael started to intervene. The question assumed a continuing relationship that might not be practical once they returned to their separate worlds. But Sophia answered before he could speak. I'd like that very much, if it's okay with your dad. Emma turned expectant eyes to Michael, who found himself at a crossroads he hadn't anticipated. The events of the past 72 hours had created a connection that defied conventional relationships. Sophia wasn't just the CEO of Walker Maritime anymore, and he wasn't just a dock worker. They'd confronted danger together, exposed criminal enterprises, saved lives. How did you categorize something forged in such extreme circumstances? You're welcome here anytime. Michael kept his voice neutral, despite the complexity of emotions beneath the simple statement. Maybe when things settle down. Sophia nodded, understanding both what was said and left unsaid. Before standing, she pressed something into Emma's palm, a small, intricately folded paper boat crafted from golden paper. I made this one special last night after everyone went to bed. It has an extra dose of hope. Emma clutched the golden boat reverently. I'll keep it safe until you come back. The driver loaded Sophia's bag into the car as final goodbyes were exchanged. Margaret retreated tactfully to the house, giving them a moment of privacy. Michael cleared his throat, suddenly awkward now that their shared mission had concluded. Let me know how things go with the board. Sophia nodded, professional composure sliding back into place. I'll be in touch about the foundation too. We're establishing a support fund for the victims. Thought you might want to be involved, given your connection to the case. The formality of her language created distance where intimacy had begun to develop. Perhaps it was necessary a reset to help them navigate whatever came next. But Michael found himself strangely reluctant to let go of the woman who had trusted him with her suspicions and fought beside him to expose the truth. Sophia. His voice halted her as she reached for the car door. Thank you for believing in the right things, even when it cost you everything. Something flickered across her face, vulnerability, perhaps regret at their parting. For a moment, he thought she might say more. Instead, she simply nodded, once slipped into the car and was gone, leaving Michael and Emma standing in the driveway as the vehicle disappeared around the bend. Emma looked up at her father, wisdom beyond her years in her blue eyes. She'll be back. She has our address now. 3 weeks passed before Michael heard from Sophia again. They'd returned to Portland after 10 days at the lake house once the media frenzy had subsided enough to ensure their privacy. Michael had submitted his resignation to the Port Authority, unable to return to Terminal 6 after what had transpired there. The generous severance package negotiated by Catherine Walker herself provided financial cushion, while he considered next steps. Emma had returned to school where her teachers reported she seemed unaffected by their sudden vacation. If anything, she'd become more focused on her paper boat project, expanding it into a class initiative to send messages of hope to children in hospitals. The school counselor had praised her resilience while gently probing for any signs of trauma. Michael had shared only that they'd witnessed some upsetting events related to his work, carefully omitting the true nature of what had occurred. The morning news remained dominated by the Walker Maritime scandal. Richard and James faced federal charges of human trafficking, conspiracy, and racketeering. Several terminal managers had accepted plea deals in exchange for testimony. The international network had begun to unravel as arrests spanned multiple countries. The victims from container SG42753 had been identified, with most reunited with their families under protection programs. Walker Maritime itself teetered on the brink of collapse. Stock prices continued to plummet despite Sophia's appointment as interim CEO. Major clients had canceled contracts, unwilling to risk association with a company implicated in trafficking. The board had begun discussions of selling off assets to cover mounting legal costs and victim compensation. Michael followed these developments with detached interest until the day a Walker Maritime courier delivered a thick envelope to his apartment door. Inside, he found a formal invitation to the inaugural gala for the New Horizons Foundation, along with a personal note in Sophia's handwriting. This wouldn't exist without you. Please come. The foundation, according to the enclosed materials, had been established with $60 million of Walker family assets to combat human trafficking and support survivors. Its first initiative would assist the 12 individuals rescued from Terminal 6, providing ongoing medical care, counseling, education, and relocation services. Future programs would address prevention through community education and support for vulnerable populations. Margaret agreed to watch Emma for the evening, her eyes twinkling with unspoken approval as Michael retrieved his one decent suit from the back of the closet. Just friends, he'd insisted when she'd raised an eyebrow at his careful grooming. Professional colleagues. The Portland Art Museum had been transformed for the Foundation's launch. Its grand ballroom softened with subtle lighting and tasteful decorations. Journalists crowded the entrance cameras, flashing as notable attendees arrived. Michael slipped in through a side entrance, uncomfortable with the formality of the event, despite his military experience with official functions. He spotted Sophia immediately. She stood at the center of a small group dressed in a simple black gown that somehow conveyed both authority and elegance. Her blonde hair was swept into a sophisticated updo diamond earrings, catching the light as she spoke. She looked exactly like what she was, the CEO of a major corporation, comfortable in a world of wealth and influence that remained foreign to Michael. For a moment, he considered leaving. Their worlds had collided briefly during a crisis, but perhaps they were never meant to intersect long-term. What place did a former dock worker have among Portland's elite? Before he could retreat, Sophia glanced up. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and her formal expression transformed into genuine warmth. She excused herself from her companions and made her way toward him, navigating the crowd with practiced ease. "You came." She reached for his hand, squeezing it briefly before releasing it. "I wasn't sure you would." Michael shrugged, suddenly self-conscious in his department store suit among designer formal wear. "Wanted to see what $60 million of Walker money looks like when it's put to good use." Sophia's smile dimmed slightly. 80 million now. Catherine contributed her shares after the board meeting last week. She glanced around at the gathered donors and community leaders. Not that money alone fixes what happened, but it's a start. A way to create something meaningful from something terrible. A server passed with champagne flutes. Sophia took two, handing one to Michael. "Come with me. There's someone you should meet." She led him through the crowd to a quiet corner where a striking woman in her 50s sat in a wheelchair. "Dr. Irina Petrova, this is Michael Reed, the man I told you about." Dr. Petrova was one of the people we found at Terminal 6. Michael nearly dropped his champagne in his surprise. The woman before him looked nothing like the sedated victims they discovered 3 weeks ago. She extended her hand with quiet dignity, her accent subtle but distinctly Eastern European. "It is an honor to meet you, Mr. Reed. Ms. Walker has told me of your courage." Michael shook her hand, struggling to reconcile this poised professional with his memory of the unconscious forms in the container. Dr. Petrova was... Michael glanced at Sophia, unsure how much to acknowledge. A neuroscientist specializing in experimental treatments for degenerative brain disorders. Sophia filled in smoothly. Her research in Moscow was showing remarkable promise. Irina's expression tightened, which is why certain pharmaceutical interests arranged for my acquisition. My work threatened their profit margins from existing treatments. She straightened in her wheelchair, a flash of steel beneath her composed exterior. But they did not account for people like you and Ms. Walker who still believe in justice. The conversation continued, Irina, explaining that the foundation had arranged for her to continue her research at Oregon Health and Science University under protected status. 5 of the 12 trafficking victims had similar stories. Professionals whose work threatened powerful interests targeted for their knowledge rather than more commonly understood forms of trafficking. As Sophia was called away to address the gathering, Irina fixed Michael with a penetrating gaze. She carries a heavy burden, that one. The shame of her family's actions, the struggle to save what can be saved. Her smile held wisdom born of suffering. But she has a lightness in her eyes when she speaks of you and your daughter, a warmth not present when discussing business matters. Michael shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to respond. "We went through something intense together. That creates a connection." Irina nodded thoughtfully. "In my country, we have a saying, a bridge built in fire never burns." She gestured towards Sophia, now speaking at the podium about the Foundation's mission. "Some connections transcend ordinary circumstances. They become part of who we are." Before Michael could respond, Sophia concluded her remarks and rejoined them, accompanied by Catherine Walker. The four spoke briefly about the Foundation's next steps before Catherine escorted Irina to meet potential research donors, leaving Michael and Sophia momentarily alone. She seems remarkably well considering what she endured. Michael kept his voice low, conscious of nearby guests. Sophia nodded, a shadow crossing her features. Her physical injuries will heal faster than the psychological ones, but she's determined not to be defined by what happened to her. They all are in different ways. Michael studied Sophia's profile, noting the strain beneath her professional composure. The past 3 weeks had clearly taken their toll. "How are you holding up?" Really, Sophia glanced around the elegant fundraiser, then led Michael through a discreet door onto a small balcony overlooking the museum gardens. Only when they were alone did she allow her CEO mask to slip completely. "It's been challenging. The board meetings, the federal investigators, the lawsuits, the media. Every day brings a new crisis." She leaned against the stone balustrade, moonlight silvering her blonde hair. "Walker Maritime will survive in some form, but not as we knew it. Most of our shipping operations will be sold to cover legal settlements and victim compensation. We'll retain the logistics consulting division and some warehouse facilities, enough to keep about 30% of the workforce employed." Michael absorbed this understanding, the effort she'd expended to salvage what could be saved. "What about you? Will you stay on as CEO of whatever remains?" Sophia shook her head, surprising him. "No. Once the transition is complete, I'm stepping down. Catherine will oversee the restructured company. I'm taking over the foundation full-time." The decision seemed to have lifted a weight from her shoulders. Why the foundation instead of the company? Sophia was quiet for a moment, organizing her thoughts. "When I became CEO, I thought my job was to protect the Walker legacy. Now I understand that legacy was built on looking the other way when convenient, on prioritizing profit over people." She turned to face Michael directly. "I can't undo what my family did, but I can dedicate my life to fighting the system that made it possible." The conviction in her voice reminded Michael of their conversation on the waterfront trail weeks earlier, before they'd discovered the full horror of the trafficking operation, before they'd risked their lives to expose it. She had transformed from reluctant heiress to committed advocate, her moral compass finding true north in the midst of ethical collapse. "Emma asks about you." Michael hadn't planned to share this, but the words emerged unbidden. "She's got your golden boat on her bookshelf. Says it's waiting for you to come back and check on it." Sophia's expression softened at the mention of Emma. "I've missed her, and her unique perspective on the world." She hesitated, then added, "I've missed you too." The admission hung between them, fragile as one of Emma's paper boats. Michael had told himself their connection was circumstantial, two people thrown together by crisis, bound by shared danger, rather than genuine compatibility. But in the weeks since their parting at the lake house, he'd found himself thinking of Sophia at odd moments, wondering how she was managing the corporate fallout, whether she'd found moments of peace amid the chaos. "We're different people from different worlds." Michael voiced the practical concern that had kept him from reaching out to her. Sophia considered this, then surprised him with a question. "What are you doing now?" Since leaving the terminal, the abrupt change of subject caught him off guard. "I've been looking at options. Security consulting, maybe? Or there's an operations manager position at a warehouse facility in Beaverton." Her question made him acutely aware of the employment uncertainty he faced, a stark contrast to her world of corporate leadership and million-dollar foundations. Sophia straightened, a new purposefulness entering her posture. "I've been meaning to talk to you about that. The foundation needs a security director, someone who understands trafficking operations from the ground level, so who has both tactical experience and personal investment in the mission." She held his gaze steadily. "You're uniquely qualified, Michael, not just because of your military background or what happened at Terminal 6, but because you understand what's at stake when vulnerable people are treated as commodities." Michael stared at her, blindsided by the unexpected proposal. "Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a purpose." Her voice softened. "The foundation will provide protective services for trafficking survivors, security assessments for at-risk communities, and tactical training for outreach workers. We need someone who sees people, not just security protocols. Someone like you." The offer was compelling, a chance to transform his skills into something meaningful, to prevent others from experiencing what they'd witnessed at Terminal 6. But underlying practicalities remained. "And what about Emma? My life is arranged around being present for her." Sophia smiled, clearly having anticipated this concern. "The position includes flexible scheduling and family-friendly policies. Emma would be welcome at the foundation offices after school. We're even planning a youth advisory board for our education initiatives. Her perspective would be invaluable. The thoroughness of her consideration touched something in Michael that had remained carefully guarded since Sarah's death. Sophia hadn't just thought about his professional qualifications. She'd considered how the role would fit with his priorities as a father. Still, caution held him back. The foundation is your world, your creation. If things became complicated between us personally, the professional situation could become untenable. Sophia recognized the unspoken question beneath his concern. Is this offer because of professional respect or something more? Her expression grew serious. I won't pretend there isn't a personal element to my thinking. What we experienced together created a connection I can't easily define. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a surprisingly vulnerable gesture from someone so composed. But the job offer stands on its own merits, regardless of whatever else might develop between us. The foundation needs you, Michael, whether or not anything more comes from our relationship. The honesty of her response disarmed his remaining objections. He'd spent 5 years since Sarah's death focusing solely on Emma building walls around his heart to prevent further loss. The idea of opening himself to new possibilities, professional and personal, terrified and attracted him in equal measure. I'd like to see the detailed job description. His tone remained cautious, but the decision had already crystallized in his mind. And Emma would need to be comfortable with the arrangement. Sophia's smile could have illuminated the darkened garden without assistance from the moon. Of course, I have the materials at my office. Perhaps you and Emma could come by tomorrow. I could show her the foundation space. There's a children's area we're developing for survivors' families. The careful inclusion of Emma in her planning spoke volumes. Sophia understood that they were a package deal. Any relationship with Michael necessarily included his daughter. It showed a thoughtfulness that transcended corporate efficiency. She'll want to bring paper boats. Michael couldn't help returning Sophia's smile. It's become her mission to spread hope wherever she goes. Sophia's eyes brightened with genuine warmth. I'd expect nothing less from Admiral Emma. She straightened professional demeanor, returning as she glanced at her watch. I should get back donor obligations. But tomorrow around 2, Michael nodded and they rejoined the gala separately, maintaining professional distance despite the private understanding that had developed on the balcony. Throughout the remainder of the evening, he observed Sophia in her element, gracious with donors, passionate when discussing the foundation's mission, strategic in connecting key supporters. The corporate armor remained in place, but he now recognized it as a tool rather than her essence. As the event concluded, they exchanged brief goodbyes amid the departing crowd. Nothing in their public interaction would have suggested anything beyond professional courtesy, but the promise of tomorrow hung between them, along with possibilities neither had dared articulate fully. Emma approved of the foundation offices with characteristic decisiveness. The converted warehouse in Portland's Pearl District balanced industrial aesthetics with welcoming warmth, exposed brick, and timber beams softened by comfortable furnishings and abundant natural light. The children's area particularly impressed her with its art supplies, books in multiple languages, and quiet spaces designed for young people processing trauma. Daddy, they need boats here. Emma surveyed the space with the seriousness of a professional consultant. Big ones for the walls and little ones for the children to take home. Sophia, who had been giving them the tour, knelt to Emma's level. That's exactly what I was thinking. Would you help us design them? You're the expert after all. Emma nodded solemnly, already planning. We could have a boat-making station over there, and maybe pictures showing how to fold them for kids who can't read yet. Michael watched their interaction with a curious lightness in his chest. Emma had accepted Sophia's presence in their lives with the straightforward adaptability of childhood, neither questioning the connection nor overthinking its implications. While adults constructed elaborate frameworks to rationalize relationships, children simply recognized genuine care when they encountered it. The tour continued through various departments: legal advocacy, survivor services, education and prevention, security operations. Throughout, Sophia introduced Michael to the growing staff, making his expertise and potential role clear without pressuring him for an immediate decision. She had assembled a remarkable team: former law enforcement trauma specialists, legal experts, and several trafficking survivors serving as consultants. In her private office, she finally presented Michael with the formal job description, security director overseeing protective services threat assessment and staff safety training. The compensation package exceeded his expectations with benefits specifically designed for employees with dependents. The flexible scheduling would accommodate Emma's school hours and activities with emergency childcare services available when needed. Everything about the position reflected Sophia's understanding of his priorities and values. She had created a role that would utilize his skills while respecting his commitments as a father. The thoughtfulness behind it touched him deeply. "I'd like to accept the position." Michael made his decision as Emma explored the small conference room adjacent to Sophia's office, already sketching boat designs on a notepad provided by Sophia's assistant. "If Emma's comfortable with the arrangement, I can start next week." Sophia's professional composure cracked slightly, revealing genuine delight. "That's wonderful. The team will be thrilled." She hesitated, then added, "And so am I personally." The distinction between professional satisfaction and personal pleasure didn't escape Michael's notice. Sophia was carefully maintaining boundaries while acknowledging the undercurrent between them. It showed a respect for complexity that he appreciated. Emma reappeared clutching her sketches. "Can we go see where Daddy would work? I want to make sure it's good enough." Sophia bit back a smile at the child's protective instinct. "Of course. The Security Operations Center is just down the hall." As they followed Emma, who skipped ahead with boundless energy, Sophia spoke quietly to Michael. "There's something else I wanted to discuss. The lake house, I'm transferring ownership to the foundation for use as a retreat facility for trafficking survivors. But I thought perhaps—" She hesitated suddenly, less certain than she'd been when discussing business matters. "Perhaps you and Emma might like to use it occasionally, for weekends or school breaks." It seemed to be good for both of you. The offer carried layers of meaning beyond practical generosity. The lake house represented the beginning of their connection, a place where Emma had found joy despite the circumstances that had brought them there. That Sophia remembered this, valued it enough to ensure their continued access, spoke to her understanding of what truly mattered to them. That would mean a lot to Emma. Michael kept his voice neutral, though his emotions were anything but. "She talks about the lake house almost daily, especially the paper boat launches." Sophia nodded, clearly pleased by his acceptance. "Perhaps we could go there sometime, all of us, when things settle down a bit with the foundation launch." The invitation remained appropriately ambiguous, not quite personal, not strictly professional, leaving room for their relationship to evolve naturally. Michael appreciated the lack of pressure, the recognition that whatever developed between them would need time and space to find its form. Emma rushed back to them, eyes wide with excitement. "Daddy, they have cameras that can see everything, and special phones for emergencies. And a man named Carlos who used to be in the Marines." Michael laughed at her enthusiasm. "Does that mean you approve of my new job?" Emma gave him a look that suggested the question barely deserved an answer. "Obviously. And Sophia will be your boss, which means she'll have to come over for dinner sometimes to talk about work stuff." Her attempt at casualness failed entirely, transparent matchmaking evident in her satisfied expression. Sophia caught Michael's eye over Emma's head, amusement dancing in her gaze. "I suppose that would be necessary. For professional reasons." The shared moment of understanding passed between them. Acknowledgement of Emma's transparent scheme and mutual willingness to let possibilities unfold. They continued the tour of professional discussions interspersed with personal observations, boundaries carefully maintained, but gradually softening. Later, as they prepared to leave, Emma presented Sophia with a paper boat crafted from foundation letterhead, unauthorized but forgiven. "I made this for your desk, so you remember that hope is always important even when you're doing big, important CEO things." Sophia accepted the gift with genuine reverence. "I'll keep it where I can see it every day, to remind me why we're doing this work." In the parking garage, final goodbyes took on a different quality than their parting at the lake house. The uncertainty had transformed into anticipation, the distance into potential connection. Michael would return on Monday as security director. Emma would visit after school, and Sophia would navigate her dual roles as foundation president and personal friend with characteristic grace. Standing beside his truck, Michael made a decision. "Before we go, I'd like to invite you to dinner tomorrow night. Not for work discussions, not as foundation colleagues." His voice remained steady despite the significance of the invitation. "Just the three of us, at our apartment. Nothing fancy, but—" He trailed off, letting the implication stand. Sophia's professional mask slipped completely, revealing a smile that transformed her entire being. "I'd like that very much." She glanced at Emma, who was practically vibrating with excitement in the truck. Both professional and personal boundaries duly noted. As they drove away, Emma's satisfied grin reflected in the rearview mirror. "I told you she'd come back. The boats always know where they need to go." Michael couldn't argue with his daughter's paper boat philosophy. Some connections did find their way through troubled waters, carrying hope when everything else threatened to sink. The bridge built in fire, as Irina had called it, had led them from danger and trauma towards something unexpected but genuine, the possibility of a new beginning crafted from the wreckage of corruption. The golden paper boat still sat on Emma's bookshelf, a fragile vessel carrying outsized hope. But perhaps hope, as Emma insisted, really was the lightest and strongest cargo of all capable of staying afloat when everything else submerged, guiding lost souls toward home through the darkest waters.